Call of Duty has a new phenomenon on its hand, and it's yet another way people are trying to break skill-based matchmaking. Now look, I think we all have our gripes with the matchmaking system in Warzone. I've done breakdowns of it, analyses of it, I've done every explanation and explainer possible at this point in time on this channel, and you can check those out in the description below. But at a very fundamental level, people just don't like Call of Duty's matchmaking. It doesn't matter how many blogs they release, it doesn't matter how many things they do, people dislike a matchmaking experience that feels like it's rigged against them or rigged in a certain way that makes them either play longer or generally have less enjoyment. With all of that being said, things are the way they are, and lots of people in numerous times across the past couple of years of Warzone have tried to circumvent skill-based matchmaking as much as humanly possible. But the new method and how people are trying to break the system and get into lobbies that they ultimately have no business in being in is something called two-boxing. And it's a method that's so extreme that actually works so ridiculously well that I really feel it's going to be a problem. And the reason I think it's a problem is because it's only available to a select number of people who are going to do it. And for once, I actually am pointing the blame at content creators and streamers. You guys will know from watching my own live streams that I'm often the victim of cranked matchmaking, and I experience the same kind of experiences that most of you have throughout Warzone. But this is the one time where I've seen something so specific to people who are willing to spend money that it's almost blown my mind a little bit. The concept is very simple. You take two low-level accounts and matchmake with them into a trios game, and then have those accounts leave when you enter the game. These are often console accounts with very low levels or deliberately manipulated KDs to drag the overall MMR of your lobby into the floor. I've seen evidence of this working, and I've seen it numerously online, and I'm not going to replicate it. The footage you're seeing today is just standard solos gameplay, because whether it's 1 game, 5 games, or 10 games, I really don't see the value in destroying multiple people's lobbies and multiple people's experiences post-work or post whatever they so happen to be doing for the benefit of 1 or 2 videos. So by simply having a load-in with these 2 low-level accounts, which then back out, which make it appear as though you're playing a solo experience heading into the game, you ultimately get a lobby that you never should be in, a lobby that should never exist, and somebody with a really high KD or a really highly skilled player ends up amongst players who are in entirely different leagues of gameplay to them. I understand people's frustrations with skill-based matchmaking, and I understand that it's a system that ultimately feels like it punishes everybody equally, especially players in the medium bracket of KD, because they ultimately end up being pushed between all of the highly skilled players and other players of their own skill bracket. And it creates this really claustrophobic and dense gameplay experience where it feels like you can never really have a solid game or a game that works in your favor. I've spoken about all of that extensively before, and I've spoken about how skill-based matchmaking punishes what I would consider to be the majority of players in the medium skill bracket by putting them in all of these really challenging lobbies. But when we've reached a point when people are trying to turn their router into spaceships, trying to connect to places like Kenya, or trying to use 2 console accounts to get into extremely low-tier skill brackets, I think something's just gotta give. Either give us a really strict MMR system that obviously always works all the time, and stop these guys who are trying to get into lobbies they shouldn't be in from getting in them, or just dismantle the whole thing and go connection-based. I think Call of Duty has very much reached a pinnacle now where it doesn't feel like you're playing a game that benefits and rewards you for being skilled at the title or learning how to get better or doing X, Y, Z, A, B, or C, but rather is a game of how you can cheese as many things as humanly possible. Can you cheese a meta in the game? Can you cheese a busted attachment? Can you cheese the matchmaking system? Can you cheese a broken skin that you can't see in the dark? It's just all of these things that come together that I think has honestly created a gameplay loop that is alienating players. And quite frankly, if they see what is very obviously 2-box behavior from people who are trying to get into easier lobbies, at this point I would just temporarily ban them, or issue them a suspension of some demeanor. I don't think they're ever going to do that because they don't like to acknowledge the element of skill within their matchmaking system, or at least acknowledge the extent of impact that it has on their overarching system. But I think it just blows my mind that we're at a point in COD where people are feeling broken down to a point where they want these easy lobbies and are willing to spend money on consoles to do it and achieve it. And also at a point where the most skilled of players seemingly don't want to challenge anybody of a similar skill bracket. And I've said it before and I'll say it again because I'm preaching to the choir, this entire scenario wouldn't exist if Big Map Ranked and Resurgence Ranked were dedicated staples that were always there. because all of the sweats would be playing ranked, and you could open up the matchmaking pool within public playlists to create a very open connection-based system that didn't rely heavily on skill-based matchmaking and was as random as the day comes. Now, if you're somebody who is on a somewhat sane playing field and you're not willing to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on multiple consoles to achieve this, then chances are you are just another normal person who's experiencing the same dire straits of matchmaking like the rest of us. But I do want to point out that I have noticed some very large discrepancies in Warzone's matchmaking over the last couple of weeks. So not every easy lobby and not every easy lobby that your local content creator or streamer is getting is the result of them finding some sort of mega cheese way to get into the matchmaking. Content creators who play at an early time of day in the morning especially are people who are going to get substantially easier lobbies as people are back at school, back at work, whatever it so happens to be. And also, on the big map, I honestly feel the player pool for it has stagnated so heavily that the matchmaking at this point might actually just be random. I've had games in solos where I'm fighting people who clearly don't know what they're doing, and I've even had trio fill games where I'm getting accounts that are level 2 and level 22 as my fill teammates. So this isn't time for everybody to put on their pointing fingers and the blame game, but it does exist. It has existed. I've seen it on social media. I've seen evidence of people doing it. And I've seen the results for myself and the impact that it's happening within the Warzone system. I really do feel at this point that the only blanket solution to all of this within Call of Duty's matchmaking system is to identify that there is a problem with matchmaking, that people are trying to actively circumvent it, and announce the systems and how they work. Have a system for public playlists, have a system for ranked playlists, and make it fundamentally clear that from X date forward, may that be April 2024 or May 2024, circumventing those matchmaking systems or attempting to boost yourself by manipulating those matchmaking systems would be a punishable offense. Call of Duty currently can't do that because their hands are tied. They haven't acknowledged the extent of skill-based matchmaking in their game, and indeed up until later last year, they actually never even acknowledged that it even existed in their game at all. SBMM as a word was a very dirty word that they wouldn't utter in any public statement, sentence, or any blog before. They still haven't said the phrase SBMM, they've simply noted that 7 different features affect matchmaking, but the proof is in the pudding, and everybody can see how Call of Duty operates, and everybody can see how it works. And because of that, it's becoming a system that is now being fundamentally exploited. And even if it is only a handful of players, a couple hundred players, or even a couple thousand players who are attempting to do these things, it's still enough of a problem that it needs to be dealt with. It's going to stop new players playing, it's going to stop players who are trying their best to improve from playing, and it's going to punish those players for trying to experience Warzone at their own pace. I, again, have my own personal gripes with how Call of Duty handles matchmaking. I want the whole system to be scrapped and reworked, and I want the game to actually come in with an emphasis of a split between public games and ranked games. But until that happens, at the bare minimum, stop these systems from being utterly demolished and exploited to the top level. That's about it for this video today. If you want more Call of Duty deep dives, more spectating videos, and more analysis of how the game works, how it functions, and how to improve, please consider dropping a like, subscribing, and I'll see you again in the next one.